are there, as we speak now, any positive tests within the Bills, players, coaches, staff, that you could tell us as we speak?
Right. What I can tell you is there are no positive tests as we speak.
Okay. And then as a follow-up, you're preparing to face a team that has had additional positive tests today on top of others, and that there's a real possibility that this game would not be played as scheduled Sunday. How are you going about preparing for that? And if you could also fold in what communication there has been, what the conversation has been internally regarding that, but also in communication with the NFL.
Yeah, we're aware of the situation. We are monitoring the situation as well, Vic, and certainly it's a situation that we take seriously. That said, and there is obviously a human side to this, and making sure everyone is healthy, and that is our as we focus on us here at the Buffalo Bills in our building. That has always been our number one goal, is the safety and well-being of our employees and our staff and our players. That said, because of the nature of where things are coming from in terms of our opponent in Tennessee this week with their situation, it's important that we focus on the pieces that we can control. And that for us is A, making sure that we're doing things right here with the protocols, and then B, that we have a good week of practice leading up to the game.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, Sean, good to see you. Going off of Vic's question there, how comfortable would you be at this point continuing to play this game, knowing that there are reports that more Titans players have tested positive, and we're only 4 days away from this game?
Yeah, I think that's real. That's a real, obviously, situation. And like I said, Heather, we are monitoring it as closely as we can from here. And we have to be, as I've said before, responsible and continue to gather information so that we can, as I said before, put the health and well-being of our people in our building at the top of our priority list. We have a lot of trust and faith in the league. And so, after saying that, it's, hey, what can we control? And that's really where our focus is right now, is making sure that we are doing everything we can to follow the protocols and everything right on our end. And then on the field is making sure our focus is on us growing as a football team.
And you talk about, focusing on what you can control. Obviously, there's two sides to it. It's only what you guys can control, but then it's also whatever other teams are doing. I guess, how frustrating is it when you guys know that you're taking the proper protocols and you're doing everything that you can in your building within your team, but you have no idea what other teams are doing, and that can impact, your team and your season?
Yeah, I think that's we just need to be aware of that, and that's the reality of our situation. It's somewhat of the reality of the world we live in right now, is everyone has to be responsible and to some extent accountable to one another in order to help curb the spread of COVID-19. And I think that's true, and on and off the field in this case, inside the NFL and outside the NFL.
Thanks, Sean.
Sure.
Hey, Sean, John Scott. I know the league, I think within the past 24 hours, has sent out a even more advanced, strict version of protocols. What are you guys doing, maybe even on top of that, to further make sure things are safe? And how have you altered things around the building, to make sure that what happens in other teams doesn't happen here?
Well, it's, we're fighting an uphill battle. I think we know that there's a challenge because of how easily this thing spreads. Having acknowledged that, John, it's the league, I think, took the right steps to increase the protocols, and it's necessary because it's only going to get more difficult as people are saying. And listen, no one's perfect, and we haven't been perfect. We're trying to do the best we can, and I think every day, just like we try and grow on the field, we're trying to grow off the field, and this is one piece of that growth that we can double down on our process with masking and distancing and holding one another accountable and being responsible for our actions.
Understanding the challenges that do come with this and making sure everyone stays on top of it, what are your thoughts on a potential bubble situation?
Yeah, I'm not going to get into that. I can appreciate where you're coming from on that, but I'm a football coach, and I'll leave that to the powers that be.
Thanks, Sean.
Sure.
Hi, Sean. Good morning. I need to ask you this question. With all the protocols you guys are doing, even on game day, with the coaches wearing masks on the sideline and all that, do you find it a bit troubling that when the game ends, the teams come together, a lot of times with their helmets off, shake hands, hug, all that stuff? It just doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me. And we've all seen this picture of Mahomes and Stephon Gilmore the other night sharing a hug after the game. Is this a problem for you going forward?
Well, again, I think it's awareness, right? Awareness and trying to improve our practices. And I mean, even for myself, Sal, I go to midfield and shake the opponent, the other coach's hand. And it's always been a sign of respect, right? And so, but just like a lot of our habits have had to been adjusted with COVID, that is something that I know I'm considering. Not that I wouldn't do it, but maybe just be in and out rather quick if we had to, and so it's just trying to improve our daily habits and our daily process to make sure that we do try and stay as healthy as possible.
I guess too. I mean, it's an unusual circumstance, so I get good sportsmanship, but I mean, do you think the league needs to step in and say, hey, when the game's over, go to your locker rooms? I mean, I don't know if it has to be an edict, but what do you think of that?
Well, I'll let that up to you. You can write that article. Again, I just think it's awareness for everyone, and everyone improving our daily routines, our daily hygiene, our daily practices and habits. And if that's one thing that we can do to help, then that's I know at our team that's certainly what we would do if that's what they prescribe.
Okay, thanks, Sean.
Sure.
Hey, Sean, John Worrell, AP. Hope all is well with you, and glad that you and the team are staying safe. What are the inherent risks of traveling to Tennessee and playing this game, knowing that this team, the Titans, have 2 positive tests this morning?
What did you say? Make sure I understand your question.
The inherent risks of making this trip.
Well, I think that's what the league has to evaluate. We certainly are aware of it, like I said, John, and we're monitoring it very closely. In particular, Brandon and our operations staff, and it goes well beyond us. And so I think again, we've got to be mentally tough right now, and we're fortunate that our guys are mentally tough individuals. That said, there's a human element to this, and I think there's layers on this. So we're 4 days, out from the game, and again, as I said before, our responsibility, commitment has got to be to, number one, the health and safety of our organization and the people inside of our organization, including our players, and the trust that we have in the league at the league level to do what they feel is right.
That said, and I appreciate that, I respect that response, Sean. Do you and your team's leadership group feel comfortable making this trip right now as it stands?
Yeah, I'm not going to get into that right now, John. I don't think that I don't have all the facts in front of me. And so I've been really honestly tied up with the team this morning with getting some updates throughout the morning on the developments down in Tennessee. So it's I think, as you know, it's an ongoing and evolving situation, and we'll get information from the league when they have all their information, I'm sure.
Thanks, Sean.
Sure.
Hey, Sean, hear you talk a lot about controlling what you can control, but I'm curious, how much control do you and the team have as far as actually playing the game on Sunday? So, like, hypothetically speaking, if you weren't comfortable playing by the time the game time comes around, do you have a say in whether or not, the game actually occurs?
Well, I mean, listen, at the end of the day, we've got to do what's right. And I think that's the key. And the NFL, there's a lot of smart people there and people that, know a lot of the facts a lot more than I do, especially in this case with the Tennessee Titans. And, I'm one of the leaders in our building. And I think that's when it comes down to measuring the facts that we are aware of. And then also us doing our part on our end to communicate and always put our organization in the right situation best we can with the facts we know. So outside of that, again, we're going out to practice in a couple minutes here, as you know, and that's the piece we're going to control, and that's to grow as a football team this week.
And that might be my fault. I should ask a little more concisely. If you don't feel comfortable playing, can you tell the league the Bills do not feel comfortable going to Tennessee? Like, do they take your opinion into account, or does the league ultimately decide?
Well, I think they would, but I'm not saying that would sway their decision. But I think communication, anytime you have situations like this, communication is important, right? To make sure everyone shares their thoughts and feelings. At the end of the day, that decision is probably not going to be made by Sean McDermott, respectfully. But I do think it is important for all parties involved to communicate when it comes down to things like this.
Gotcha. Appreciate it, Sean.
Sure.
Hey, Sean, Adam at WGRZ TV. I think you've probably touched on a lot of what your message has been to your team. How would you gauge their mood, their reaction, their level of concern as this Tennessee game approaches under the circumstances it does?
Yeah, Adam, I would say they're aware of it, much like we are as an organization in terms of they're aware of it. Their antennas are up. They follow, most of these young guys follow social media rather closely, for better or worse. But that said, I know they're focused on going and taking the field here in a few minutes to practice. And I understand, like I said before, there's a human element to this, and it takes mental toughness to do our best to compartmentalize that. But that's what we need to do right now. And so that's what we plan on doing as we take the practice field shortly.
And just, I think a lot of us have followed the protocols and understand them to a fairly good degree. Is there any change in terms of what happens internally with the Bills given potential exposure in the Raider game?
Just so I understand your question, Adam, can you ask that again?
Does the testing alter in any way, shape, or form, given the fact there may have been exposure to some of your players in the Raider game, given Maurice Hurst's positive?
Yeah, I mean, we continue to test daily, which I think is a great thing for us to have. I mean, nothing changed to my knowledge and my understanding to this point, other than us knowing about it and guys, again, being aware of it, and their antennas being up. We hope it's a contained situation, and that's what we pray for going forward here.
All right. Thank you, Sean.
Sure.
Hey, Sean, Mike Catalana. Back in camp, we talked about almost like peer pressure helping because you have leaders on the team. Is that something you've been happy with the way that's been going? Is there a unified message that you give to your leaders to keep that message going so that there aren't issues when players are outside the building, or at least you minimize those as best you can?
Well, and I think the tail end of your question, Mike, is really what we're trying to do is to minimize. It's a challenge. It's an uphill battle, but we're trying our best to minimize. It's not to say that anyone's perfect, but we're trying to improve our practices and habits, and it's a consistent approach, right? Trying to be as consistent as we can. And it just seems like when you let your guard down, or you start to get too comfortable, if you will, then this thing comes up and rears its ugly head. And that's the unfortunate piece about this thing.
And in terms of that, coming from you, obviously you're the coach, you're the leader, but sometimes when it comes from the teammates, it just accentuates a little bit more. Have you seen that? And like I said, is that a unified message, or do you just have that inherent trust in your guys that they're going to be saying the right thing especially to their younger teammates?
No, I think it boils down to, again, within the realm of no one's perfect, it boils down to a leadership and accountability, situation. And I count on our leaders, our veteran leaders on our football team, our coaches, and everyone in our building to take a piece of the ownership of this and model the behavior that we want. And that's not to say that I've been 100% with it either, just being human about it. But I'm trying to do the best that I can, and I ask our team to try and do the best that they can. And even with that, could there be a positive that creeps in? Absolutely. That's the unfortunate piece of this. That said, we're trying to do the best job that we can by controlling the pieces, Mike, that we can on our end here.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Hey, Sean, Thad Brown. Has the league communicated to you any possibility of this game being a Monday or a Tuesday game? And I ask you that, with the knowledge that your next game is on Thursday, so it's not as simple as most weeks to just bump this game one day to Monday if you have to.
Yeah, Brandon has been in communication with the league to this point. I have not been on those calls. Brandon's been briefing me. Outside of that, honestly, Thad, the communication to this point has really been with the league in terms of them gathering information and data that they need. And so, again, we're just more of I hate to say business as usual right now, but because we know what is going on, but we're trying to do our job, and that means going and us practicing and us growing as a football team here in a few minutes.
Any idea when you would know, yay or nay, about Sunday?
Yeah, no, I really don't know anything more at this point.
And then one more thing that, there's been talk out there about the kind of nuclear option of this, which is a Titans forfeit. If the league finds that they have some sort of impropriety with how they handle their COVID protocols. I know it's not your call, but as a football coach, it affects you in a whole bunch of different ways. What would be your take on the league going to that extreme to solve this problem this weekend?
Yeah, I'm not going to get into that. Obviously, that's their decision, and those decisions, like most, are made at their level. So whatever the league decides, we'll support and trust.
Thanks, Sean. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Hey, Sean, Sal Capaccio, WGR. You told us on Monday you termed Matt and Levi, I believe, both week to week. Any plans at all for them to go on injured reserve? And also, would there be any plans yet for John Feliciano to return to practice since he's eligible?
We're still looking at Matt and Levi's situation. Neither of those two will practice today. And the third person you mentioned, I'm sorry.
John Feliciano is eligible to come back to practice?
Yeah, he'll begin practice today
Okay.
in some capacity.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hey, Sean, Josh Reed here. As if it's not challenging enough to be an NFL head coach. What is the challenge of making sure that the players inside the locker room stay focused and have that idea and that tunnel vision of, hey, we're going to play Sunday, and not get a thought in their mind of, well, there might not be a game?
Yeah, that's the mental toughness piece in this, and the ability to compartmentalize, obviously recognizing the real human piece of this. Having said that, it's, hey, let's acknowledge that, and then let's try and get ourselves, and I thought we did a great job of this last week, focused on the Raiders last week, and even though we were getting questions asked about the Titans last week, because obviously it's our next opponent, or at the time was our next opponent. And I thought our guys did a great job of that last week of compartmentalizing. And that's, to me, a mental toughness component. And now in the same way, now that they're the Titans are now our main opponent here in the situation that's going on down there, we've got to double down on that process. And that's what we discussed this morning.
One last thing, Sean. Any update on Josh's shoulder? Are you happy with the progress and the treatment?
Yeah, no real update at this point. He seems to be in pretty good spirits.